Hi, it's Brian, and today we've got the 3 DOF assembly of the Yaw 2 motion simulator. Here's all the required tools that I used. And this is all of the fixings that were required for my unit at least. So we're going to have some important free flight checks. We want to undo this section, which is at the front of the pitch base, and we want to undo this connector which disconnects the Ethernet from the pitch unit, and that's because this is going to have the rotation unit, and we want to reattach that. And then we want to check that the power supply voltage is set correctly for our region. So at this power supply at the top, you should be able to see whether it's set to 110 volts or 220. And based on that, I would assume that the bottom one is set correctly. It's much harder to get to the bottom one. And you can see between the holes in the grills there. We want to check the dip switch for the sensor. Both of these should be set to on. At least one other user had a blue switch color on theirs, but functionally it's the same, and they should both be switched to on. Then we have our pitch rollers. Now Yaw recommends that both of these the top and bottom should be set to the outer slots. For me, the back I had on the inner slot, and sometimes the pitch roller could get moved in transit and be stuck under that tab. So now we're onto the rotation unit, and we're going to connect our 4 feet. So it's the same process on all 4. Then we can place the pitch unit on top. Now, if you have a newer unit, there's some shims that you need to place between on the inside where these nuts go. There's an instruction sheet which I'll link in the description about that on the Yaw website. So you do all 4 of these screws up, and that holds the pitch unit to the rotation unit. We want to unlock, I'll remove the tape of course. Try not to get my face in it too much. And unlock both of the locking mechanisms for the pitch unit. We can place the pitch unit on top and just gently rock side to side to make sure it's in the right place. While pushing this in, it's easier if you roll the unit front and back, and it will help the wheels engage properly, and same for when you're doing the back. Then we insert the roll plate. It takes a little bit of fiddling to get lined up, but once it's in, it should roll in quite easily. And then we have the roll platform stop block. In the pitch platform, mine's quite an early unit, so your wiring might be different. I have some screenshots after the assembly of my section. So I had this hidden Ethernet block, and this is for connecting the USB hub, which takes wire number 2. And then all the rest of the plugs can only really plug into one place except for the Ethernet. So there's the number 1 Ethernet, which you'll see me plug in shortly. But the small plug goes into the only one I can go in. Number 1 goes into the left-hand Ethernet socket. And then the remaining connector can only go in one place. I have some photos coming up of units earlier than mine and more recent units. So you feed that block back in behind everything so it's out of the way, which just you'll need to do so that you can place the cover plate back on shortly. So number 1, number 2, that's December 22 is when I got mine. So there's an earlier photo from September 22 which also had the Ethernet block in the back. Here's a late 22 which had everything visible. Then a mid 2023, everything visible again. If you only have one Ethernet port, it will be sort of hidden to the side on the left. So now we put this flat cable clamp in. and that's to stop the cabling from putting pressure on all of the connections. So M6x20 and 3mm hex key. And you just want to make sure that you're not over crushing any of those cables. And we can put the platform, the back panel plate in. So M4x8 countersunk head with 2.5mm hex key. Now we're going to assemble the footrest. Now my footplate shown here is from an earlier unit which had less mounting holes in it. I since got center replacement because of a defect in the old one. You'll see it in the later shots, but this is my initial recording because the assembly process is the same for the two DOF. So. The newer mounting plates are a lot easier to mount pedals and so on. So also weighs less, so that's a bonus. So we have the adjustment points, M6x20 with a 4mm hex, countersunk head. And now we can connect that to the seat platform. So we undo these two bolts here, and then the clamping mechanism will open. Now it is possible to do this when the platform's in place, but I find it a lot easier to do it before assembly. But if you roll all the way to one side, you can access the screw on one side and then roll to the opposite side to access the screw on the other side. So if you do forget to assemble, which I have done multiple times, you can still put it in, but it's much easier when it's separate. So we want to feed these cables through the cable slots that are coming from the pitch unit. And then we want to sit the seat platform onto this silver section here with the flat at the top. We have M6x16 CAP head with a 5mm hex key. So on the seat platform and then the roll platform, these screws holes may not line up, so you just push it until it does. And once you have one screw done up, the rest will be lined up pretty easily. The counterweight retaining clamp. So this is the place where you can put some weight plates to balance the unit properly. All right, so the seat, these are the side sort of handrests. I didn't use these. I don't really want them there, but that's where they go if you do. All right, so now we have the seat slide plate. It's got an arrow that points towards the front, so that's how it will go. So we'll just undo these 4 bolts and then do them up. And use a 5mm hex to tighten them. So this is the yaw seat. If you have a different seat, then your connection mechanism may be different. I have a separate video about that. Here, that was the locking pins. So you just sit that plate, making sure that it's on the locking pins and push back slightly. And that will mean you wouldn't be able to lift the seat straight up anymore. Now, very importantly with this screw here, is not to over tighten it. It only really needs to just touch the seat plate to stop it from sliding forwards. And if you're doing it up, it'll be very easy to over tighten. So I didn't install seatbelts on the video, but here's a section where I show that if the buckle is lower than the platform, it will actually hit and restrict motion. So if I take that buckle off and show it again in a second, you'll see that there's considerably more movement possible. So just be careful when you're putting those belts on to make sure that they're not restricting that movement. And you could end up denting the platform. Now we have the central holder, assembling that. So this top plate has a bend which increases the structural integrity of it. And you'll see I have the bend down towards me at the moment, but when I install it on my yaw, I install it with the bend down away from me. And the primary reason for that is if you're using the steering wheel for racing simulation, you don't want it to be angled down when you do up the clamps. So that's what I'm doing. I think it makes sense. So there's an M6x30 locking knob. Just do that up as tight as you can. All right, the side rail assembly. This is an optional component. I backed the Kickstarter, so I received it. So we have the M6x8 countersunk head with a V-slot nut, and you just want to do the nut up a little bit and then line it up so it'll be easier to slide it into the rail. And in this assembly, I had the plate going out away from the crossbars. When I actually installed it on my yaw, which you'll see later in the video, the plate makes more sense to be coming in towards, so you have less protruding out at the side of the yaw. I also ended up moving the plate all the way to the front. So we've got slots. So now you'll see that assembly. So there's 2 slots there where the side rails go. The crossbars go, and they have threaded sections underneath. So I found it easier to have one of them sort of done up tight at right angles, and then the back one I left looser so that I could align those holes properly and then do up the right angled bracket tightly. And this is all the same size Allen key. So 5mm hex for the bolts on the bottom and for the right angle bracket. All right, now we're going to connect the AC wiring to the smart plug box. And then this 3-pin cable is for the LED lights on the yaw seat, which connects sort of more towards the right-hand side of the seat is that cable. And then the Ethernet goes into the USB hub. And then for turning on, top switch, both switches go the same way. They both need to be on. And you'll see this light here shows that the motors are powered. If you take away the emergency stop, which is magnetic, the light will go off. When you put it back in place, it comes back on. All right, awesome. We've done the assembly. So now here is the first motion test. I've sped this up to 4-speed time. I'd really appreciate it if you found this video helpful. If you'd like to donate something to me, it would be awesome. That's a PayPal donate link. I don't have enough subscribers to monetize the channel, but I have put a lot of time into this and previous videos. So hopefully it helps you. And if you have the means, I'd really appreciate a donation. Thank you. So the motion test, for some reason, even in the app, although it says random yaw, it doesn't do the yaw movement. So I found you run the motion test, and then after it, you can just go to manual mode and operate the yaw movement. You may find that it rattles a bit when there's no one on it, but I've never had it rattle when there's anyone been sitting on it. So thank you. See you soon. Cheers.